Welcome to Smart Architectural Programming. Exploring Python, how to list files in a directory with multiple examples.
Now, you'll notice something that I've used ends with extension. So I'm checking for what the file type is, because if you're familiar with programming or just computer in general, you'll understand that files end in dot something, right? And that usually depicts what sort of file it is. So .txt is a simple text file. So we'll probably check for simple text file in this piece of code. You can change it to .pdf to check for PDF files, so on and so forth. So basically, list comprehension plus the list dir function from the OS library gives us the ability to filter out output from the list directory that we want to get information about, and just find out the exact specific files within a directory that we want to look at. Now, with that out of the way, we'll move on to the next file, which is probably completely different from the first two. And because we're using here another library called glob. Now, a lot of you would not be familiar at all with glob, but glob is a Python library for more advanced pattern matching. So it's a library that's used for more advanced pattern matching tasks for Python. And in this you'll notice that we have used something called in the variable that we created, like before within our function, we have used glob.glob. So we have a glob library within which we have a function called glob that we're going to use. Within that function, we tell them, this is the pattern that we want the information for. This is the pattern that you need to match, right? And by pattern, I mean, just like I mentioned extension previously to filter out stuff, glob does the same thing, but we define a pattern that's just not the ending one or the start with. It is anything in between, right? And just like terminals, we can use the asterisk as the wildcard to just say, tell me all of the files within the directory. Anything before .txt, I want that, right? That's what we mean when we say asterisk.txt in the input file here. So basically, glob is a very essential tool if you want to do basically do pattern matching similar to command lines. It returns a list of paths matching for a specified pattern, and this provides much more flexibility and strength to our pattern matching ability compared to other things. Basically, it helps us do much complicated levels of filtering compared to the simple filtering we were using with list comprehension. Now, basically, that's all the difference you'll find in this path. It does the same thing as the previous file, but it is different way to do pattern matching. And again, I emphasize the point here. What have you learned till right now, right? People just give you one method and say that's it. Like, you just use that method. We're going over 4 different methods, and by the third method, you'll notice you've been exposed to the OS library and the lister command that's specific for that. You've been exposed to a concept called list comprehension, which is very, very essential if you want to become a Python programmer. And on the third point, you have become familiar with a library called glob, which does advanced pattern matching, and through which we can do complex filtering tasks. So now you've been, just by looking into this video and trying to learn about how to identify all the files in a directory, you have been exposed to 3 very, very important concepts in Python. And now we're moving to the 4th one, which is using the path library of Python. So this is another library that we use in Python, and it provides us an object-oriented approach to the file system's path, basically. So at this point, you want to understand that when we talk about like deleting a file in a directory, listing all files in the directory, creating a file in a directory, this is what is widely known in a wider world known in the computer science world known as the file system operations. Now, just to give you a little bit context about file system operations, when you do file system operations, like when you work with Google Chrome, when you work with your IDEs, when you work with anything, when you open that window that helps you find a file, click on it and upload it, find a file, download it in a specific folder, all of those are file system operations. And that is why what I meant earlier by very niche segment of programming, because file system operations are very, very important in that niche sector. So if you're working with a big company if you're working with a big company with large softwares, then you might be a certain aspect, segment of the programming team might be exposed to that specific type of work. So that's what file system operations are, and this is one among many of the different file system operations that people do. So in this case, we are going to use a method. We use the method creates a path object representing the directory, and then iterates over the contents of the path directory using the path dot iter dir function. So we create a path object here. This is the object oriented approach we're taking here. So we create a path object. We save all the files on the data of that directory within that path object, and then we go over that path object using the path.iter dir directory that iterates over all content of that directory that we saved in the path object, and iterates over it. And using list comprehension here, we filter over specific aspects of that file. And if you notice, we're using the if command file.is file to check for a specific. We're just looking for data that is a file here. So in that case, moving forward, we can identify specific just file types within the directory, and you can use file.name to specify the exact name of the file that we want to use. This is a very modern and intuitive approach because we're dealing with file system operations in a very, very intelligent manner. We're not just doing simple operations. This is probably how you'll deal with file system operations within when you're working with larger scale operations, using the Pathlib library and creating objects and working with those objects. And with that, I think we'll be wrapping up our video on listing out files within a directory. George, would you like to add anything at the end before we wrap up our video?
No, I think you did a fantastic job. Just for everyone to comment and just let us know what you would like us to create videos on in the future. Thanks.
All right, thank you.